Earlier this month, we went up to Edinburgh to meet the Rockstar workers fired for what the company has described as gross misconduct, but what those same employees call union busting. Today, as you can see, I'm standing outside the Take-Two offices here in London, where protests have also been happening in support of the fired workers, including one that took place just a few days ago as I stand here myself. Now, last time we spoke, the specific details as to why the company had made such a drastic, ruthless decision were still pretty sparse. All we'd really seen was this short statement from Rockstar claiming that the employees had been distributing and discussing confidential information in a public forum, which the workers themselves have claimed was in reference to an invite-only Discord server used by Rockstar employees to organise their union activities, something they say should be protected under British trade union law. Well, today I have more information to share, having since spoken to a Rockstar insider who has shared screenshots with People Make Games of what they believe to be the messages sent just a few weeks ago on that Discord server, which directly contributed to the firings of these 34 former employees. And we also know how Rockstar got hold of these messages as well. Now, this Rockstar source who's come forward is not one of the fired workers. In fact, they're not even a member of the union. So let's start there. How exactly did this Discord server work? Well, first of all, it's not new. This server had been up and running since 2022, and essentially if an employee showed interest in joining the union, they could be invited into this Discord by select organisers, where they'd land in a general channel. There were other channels that only paying members of the union could access, which is where the real organising got done, but this general channel served a broader purpose than that. It was somewhere for Rockstar employees to find out more information about the union, and so it acted as a sort of recruitment funnel, with over 300 members in the server at its peak. As we've already heard from the union, I've had it confirmed that membership to this Discord was limited to either Rockstar employees who'd proven their identities, or representatives of the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain, which this Rockstar union was a part of. I have also been told that there may have been examples of Rockstar employees sticking around in this Discord after they'd left the company, although this isn't something I've seen any proof of so far. So what were people talking about? Well, according to my source, there were guidelines in place on this Discord as to what could and couldn't be discussed, and from their perspective, they couldn't recall a single example of any confidential game details being shared. Instead, you might see things like this: employees comparing salaries and bonuses with each other, conversations which are arguably protected by the Equality Act of 2010, which states that workers in the UK can disclose these sorts of details with one another and with trade union officials in order to determine whether any discrimination is taking place due to gender, race, disability, age, etc. Alright, so what exactly was the problem here? This server had been up and running for multiple years by the time the firings took place. When did Rockstar find out about it, and importantly, what could they possibly have seen which gave them the confidence to immediately dismiss 34 employees in this way? Here's what we now know. At the beginning of October this year, just a few weeks ago, Rockstar announced a series of changes to its internal Slack policies. Specifically, this started with the removal of the miscellaneous channels that employees from across the company used to discuss non-work topics like their pets, music taste, games they were playing, photography, film club, arts and crafts, that sort of thing. The company claims these channels had become both a source of distraction and, in some cases, poor conduct. This decision, described by some employees as the Slack purge, proved to be pretty unpopular, and the union's members immediately started discussing it over on their Discord server as the announcement went out. "I would really like to see the evidence for them being too much of a productivity hit," stated one member. "I can't imagine it being worth the absolute dumpster fire this will be for morale." Someone else asks, did they show any examples of misbehaving, or is this all finger pointing without anything specific? To which someone else responds, fucking bullshit reasons as per, backed by no evidence, I would imagine. The productivity point is a load of shit, and everybody knows it. Someone else adds, plus sending them out after most of the UK folks have left for the day, sick. Then we've got another quote from the email. "This also helps us maintain clearer boundaries between work and personal life." You can see from the emojis how that one went down. Followed by, LMAO, well then let me work my contracted hours. Now, of these Slack channels that were removed, you will be shocked to hear that it was the gaming one that had the most drama surrounding it beforehand. Some employees, just a few even, were known for being, well, let's say vocal about their opinions on the games they played, including those that other employees may have worked on at former companies. But there was another aspect to this as well. The gaming channel is also where union members would post industry news, including the avalanche of mass layoffs we've seen across games in recent years. If you remember from our previous video up in Edinburgh, the seedling emoji had particular importance to these workers. Often, when these layoffs were being talked about in Slack, union members would react to these posts using this emoji as a way of showing their solidarity with the affected workers, and in doing so, it was also a way of showing their support for the union. Over on the Discord, some of its members wondered if this was something management had intentionally tried to stifle with this decision. In response, they began drafting an open letter that could be sent to Rockstar's leadership, detailing their frustrations. Meanwhile, a second email was sent out at Rockstar announcing yet further changes to its Slack policies, including stricter guidelines on what employees could now put in their status messages on the platform. These statuses had sometimes been used by workers to display emojis, which would no longer be allowed under these new rules. Over on the Discord, one member suggested this was to stop employees from displaying Palestinian flags or seedling emojis in support of the union. Now, there's something worth understanding about Rockstar's internal communication here. This is a company that has experienced its fair share of major leaks over the years, and as a result, employees can only access their work emails while in the office itself. This includes the two emails you've just heard about in relation to the Slack policy changes that had just been announced. However, given at least one of these emails was sent outside of typical UK work hours, most people weren't able to read it when it was sent. This led to some union members who are still at the office posting information or quotes from these emails in the Discord in order for other members to see and discuss. My source claims this act, this sharing of two internal emails relating to Slack policy changes, is what led to at least one member of the Discord approaching studio management in order to express concerns about the discussions taking place. I'm told this either contributed to or kicked off an investigation into the Discord by the company, which does line up with the timings that we now understand. These Slack policy changes and the discussion surrounding them took place in the second week of October. By the end of that month, 34 people had been fired for gross misconduct. It now appears likely that Rockstar gained access to the server at some point during this period, if not beforehand, and has then trawled through the chat logs in order to build a case for its firings. I asked the head of global corporate communications at Take-Two whether or not these messages that we're publishing today represent a significant part of its argument that confidential information had been leaked on a public forum, and we were told, again, that no further comment could be made. I want to take a moment to just stop and remind us all of what we're talking about here. I've needed to dig into the weeds so far in this video, and I don't want to lose too much sight of the bigger picture in that process. As you'll have seen from the demonstration we reported on earlier this month, there were people working at this company that had been with it for 9, 10, 11 years before being terminated in this way. I've met people who are here in the UK on work visas who are facing the very real possibility of needing to uproot their entire lives again because they legally won't be able to stay in the country without the job they've just been fired from. Then there's this charge of gross misconduct in itself. Right now, this has the potential to follow some of these employees throughout the rest of their careers. This is inevitably going to come up in reference checks, or if they're asked outright in a job interview whether or not they've been fired from a previous employer. They will have no choice but to answer yes. And the way in which these people were fired, let's not forget about that either. Mere months away from one of the biggest game launches of their entire careers, these developers were escorted out of the office by security with no opportunity to say goodbye to colleagues, to explain what was happening, or to even collect their belongings from their desks. This was a merciless way to end the employment of 34 people, and because of that, there's an obligation on the part of Rockstar, both legally but also, in my opinion, ethically as well, for it to properly justify why it felt this was the only necessary course of action it could take. Unfortunately, the company isn't yet ready to make that justification, although we do intend to keep on asking them. In the meantime, I've come here to the offices of the IWGB to speak once again to the union's president and ask him what he makes of these Discord messages we've now seen and how his union intends to prove that these firings were illegitimate. You've seen some of the screenshots that we've been sent from this union Discord. I know there are legal cases now ongoing, so there might be some limitations to what you can say, but could you give me a sense of what's your read on this kind of discussion happening in the union and how it relates to charges of gross misconduct?
You know, what we've seen time and time again is that Rockstar are desperately trying to prevent people from being able to communicate. And all these workers have ever been trying to do is to discuss their pay and conditions in order to try and improve them so they can deliver a game that, you know, is loved by millions.
In terms of this being a public forum, it was Rockstar employees that are in this Discord, and they're also IWGB staff members as well. From the union's perspective, why is that legally sound? Why is IWGB allowed to be in a Discord like this?
Okay, so when people join a union, one of the biggest reasons is because they don't know their rights. They don't know what employers are depriving them of. So that's why they join a union. I mean, at the IWGP, the union is mostly a tool to organise. A lot of people don't even know what organising is. Organising is where you kind of come together with your colleagues and you start to think about, what isn't right. You start to work out legally what the company might be denying you, but then also you're working out, what could be improved amongst you. And unfortunately, workers don't just know this straight off the bat. That is why they join a union, so they can then get that expertise from union organisers, from the legal team, to help guide them through this process. So it's completely normal in any workplace for workers, when they join a union, to then be supported by union staff in order to build power and start to get concessions on stuff they're being denied. So that is what the union Discord was. It was made up of union members currently working at Rockstar and union staff who were supporting them to build a union within the company. This is something that's protected. It's UK employment law, the ability to form a union and the protections that come with that.
In terms of confidential information, as you've said before, that sometimes paints a picture of like GTA 6 screenshots being leaked, and that's certainly not the kind of thing that we've seen so far. Instead, what I've seen is discussions around pay and bonuses, and then also discussion that followed some internal Slack changes within Rockstar. From your point of view, is that the kind of thing that a union is allowed to talk about, that employees are allowed to discuss in this way? And how do you think that kind of lines up with this idea of confidential information?
So I think it is absolutely normal for people to be discussing their material conditions, whether that's bonuses, whether that's policies, whether that's anything like that. That's completely normal for staff to be doing that. And for an employer to respond in a way that kind of comes down so hard on that shows not only that they are governing by this lack of transparency, but they're also trying to govern by fear. And they feel completely threatened by the idea of workers talking to each other. And that's why they've taken this act to kind of try and destroy the union, decimate any form of kind of solidarity being built between workers, and that's why we're taking them to court.
Since we last spoke, IWGB has announced that it's launched 2 legal claims against Rockstar. Can you just briefly describe what those 2 claims are?
Yeah, so when something like this happens, the impact is massive for the workers who've been affected. And in order to bring a full substantive tribunal hearing, that can take a bit of time. And you have to, get support from the barristers and build the case, get statements, all of this sort of thing. But you can apply for something called interim relief. And this is where you apply for something in the courts that says, we're going to have a more substantive hearing, but the damages these workers are kind of feeling at this point in time means they need some support. So we're pushing for something called interim relief, which would mean, if successful, these workers are either reinstated in the short term, or the company have to pay them until that more substantive hearing happens. So the 2 things that we've applied for is number 1, the interim, and then we'll have the more substantive hearing where we're able to make more kind of deep arguments around what's happened.
Got it. When we first reported on this story, I told you it would probably be a few months until we had more to say. Clearly, that didn't end up being the case, both because this Rockstar insider got in touch and we felt it was important to show you a glimpse of what this Discord actually looked like, and the messages that are at least part of the story of how these workers ended up being fired. But also, this story has not stood still. In the 2 weeks since we visited the demonstration up in Edinburgh, we've seen protests continue to happen at Rockstar North, but also here in London, and even outside the Take-Two offices in Paris. Then there's the 220 Rockstar employees still working at the company who've submitted signed letters to their bosses calling for these union members to be reinstated. There's the legal claims and the interim relief you've just heard about, and this is a topic that's already been raised in UK Parliament.
I've written to Rockstar to ask for information on the issue, but I wondered, could I have a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss what steps can be taken to support the workforce?
Last time we spoke, I asked what if Rockstar has already calculated the acceptable amount of public backlash and legal expense it's willing to endure in order to carry out this decision. having now followed this story for a few more weeks, I'm starting to wonder if they massively underestimated what was coming. Thank you so much for watching, and doubly so if you're a People Make Games patron and providing us with the funding to do this exact kind of work. And hey, if you're a Rockstar employee and have more information to share, there are plenty of ways to get in touch. If you'd like to support our journalism at PMG, please head over to patreon.com/peoplemakegames, where you can help keep our reporting going and also unlock some extra behind the scene goodies in the process, from exclusive videos to beautiful custom art prints signed by the team and sent to your front door each month. That's patreon.com/peoplemakegames. Oh, and your name can appear in the credits too. Here's the credits.